Episode 41, Grading Chapter Wrap Up. Welcome to the 41st episode of the Card Diary by Hobbyist Thompson. But by now, y'all realize it's me, Denny Cards on Instagram, Uncle Denny, whatever you want to call me. For me, though, that number, let's go to the number 41, 41st episode. 41 really belongs to just one player, and I think it's not even subjective, it's really objective, and that's Germany's finest, Dirk Nowitzki, which is actually perfect timing because as I record this, it is the evening of October 4th, so happy Oktoberfest to my listeners in Deutschland. I also realize that Oktoberfest does start at the end of September. As someone who uh, many years ago took German in college, and so for me, Dirk Nowitzki. Okay, I'm not going to get into this whole wonderful. Let me talk about Dirk Nowitzki. Another player actually who came into mind was Glenn Rice from I don't know who claims him more, the Hornets or the Heat. Um, and I did not know, or I forgot about this, but Wes Unseld also wore 41. I did just light Googling on it, nothing, no deep research. But I will say, when I saw a list of people who wear 41, and I didn't have to look that up for like Glenn Rice and Dirk Nowitzki, but I didn't realize that Kevin Brown and Tom Seaver also wore 41. I'm not really sure how that number correlates with great pitching, but I also don't know how that correlates with, basketball and like, being a really good shooter and all that. So, but anyway, I'm already digressing. I'm like 2 minutes into this monologue episode. It's actually been quite a while since I've done a monologue episode, because this episode marks the end of the mini Meet the Grader series that I did. Um, it was really fun to have on two graders, one each from FCG, Craig, and CGC, and that was Sophia, and two presidents, one from C3 Grading, Eddie, and another for a raw card review, pre-grading assessment company, Card Boss, and that was Sean, and also the episode immediately prior to this one with AGS, Operations Manager Aaron. And I'm definitely going to give a shout out and include Ryan from GemRate, who really, in my opinion, kicked off this Meet the Grader series with his overview of the four major grading companies and the grading landscape as a whole. So I just want to say, if any of you are listening, and I think Ryan is a dedicated listener, and I really appreciate that. Thank you to all of you. Thank you to all of my awesome special guests. Y'all were absolutely fantastic. Y'all crushed it. We had some people where it was their first time ever on a podcast, and you couldn't tell, honestly. I was the one who was more, just having a hard time getting words out. I don't know what happens with turning 41, but I feel like my brain is melted. But I really do hope that you, the listener, has enjoyed each and every one of them, if you did listen to all of them, and that you learned something from each episode, because I sure know I did. So, chapter 4, the start on grading, that was episode 31, and that was on August 18th. So, since August 18th, that's, almost 2 months, 10 episodes later, we're now in October. And yeah, the only episode that didn't have to do with grading was that birthday interlude episode that I did on September 10th when I turned 41. I didn't go back and listen to it. I'm pretty sure it was nuts, talking about my mortality, my hobby journey, something. I don't know. I really don't like going back to listening to my episodes. I just record one take, and just move on. I have to listen to them if I want to cut promo reels, and that's when I do put the time in. But I don't know, editing. I love CapCut, video editing. But when it comes to editing podcasts, I thought about, maybe should I try to grow a YouTube channel, but I realized long form and editing long form videos not my neither my forte nor am I interested in doing it, I think, at this point. Um, but yeah, it's kind of wild. Since August 18th, the only other monologue episode I did was September 10th. And the reason I say it's kind of wild is because I just feel like everything what happens with this hobby, which this hobby I love, and it's just I'm so engrossed in it and I'm embedded in it now. But I feel like a week can feel like a month. I mean, every week there's just some big news, and I don't really do that in this podcast, like talk about what happened this week, that week. Maybe that's a format that I can get into later, but it doesn't really fit into this structure that I have for this, card diary with the episode, with the chapter episodes and guests on. But yeah, I'm gonna have to think about something like that maybe in the future. And I do apologize. Like for some folks, I don't know if you can tell if my voice is different. I felt like I did have to record because I haven't recorded a monologue episode in forever, but I feel like I had this raspy voice. I think it's a combination of fall allergies and also just yelling during soccer games and practices because now I'm coaching youth soccer for both of my kids, which means like two practices or three practices a week and two games. So like I don't know. I'm just yelling a lot, and it's not angry yelling. It's just more like trying to get the attention of my players. And I'll be honest. I mean, I love basketball. I love being a basketball coach. I really don't know much about soccer. I know like the general rules, the fundamentals, the foundational stuff, and I guess that's enough to teach youth sports for anything. But with soccer, I think I made an Instagram reel about it, but like saying like I don't love soccer, which yeah, I don't love it. I like soccer, and I feel like I'm a certainly a soccer expert every 4 years when the World Cup comes around, or the Men's World Cup. I'm sorry, but yeah, it's not a sport. I know it's called a beautiful game, and when I watch soccer again once every 4 years, I root for the U.S. team. I root for the South Korea team, and I do think it's like really cool. Or I mean it's at the highest levels it really is like a beautiful game, but I didn't grow up playing it. um I'm bad at it. I just tell kids to run harder. But no, I have some good assistant coaches, but it was like none, if it's one of the situations where no one wanted to step up to be the head coach for both team, well, one of the teams. And yeah, there would not have been a season. So anyway, if you have soccer cards you want to sell me, these kids love Messi and Ronaldo, and they literally will not stop doing the suey any chance they get. That they don't even have to score a goal. They can literally just, I don't know, kick the ball out of bounds, and if it's out of play, at least they do it when the ball's out of play. If they did it like during a play or while the ball was in the pitch, um, that would be I would probably just yell at them. But it's cute to see these kids just love soccer. Some of them definitely love watching it on YouTube and play FIFA, on their video game systems, consoles. My kids don't, because I don't watch it. They don't watch it. They certainly could, but it's not like deeply ingrained in me. I think we went to one DC United game before the pandemic, or I don't know, sometime. Okay, I've done a lot of digressing. Let me think about what I want to say. So let me take a pause. All right, back on track. Talking about the hobby and how fast time flies. I'm not going to get too much into a digression with this, but I don't know if you guys remember that movie Interstellar, where Matthew McConaughey, he's like on a different planet, and I don't think this is a spoiler, but time just travels so much faster in this other planetary system, and I don't know. I just feel like my time in the hobby, it's so much fun, but there's so much going on. And it always seems like there's something good and bad, or combination. And I say good and bad in like quotes, like quote unquote good and quote unquote bad, because not everything has to be so binary. I mean, that's just not how life always works. You got good people doing bad things, you got bad people doing good things, and again, those are just labels we put on certain acts. And I'm not going to get into all that right now, but you know, gosh, I mean, just from the hobby standpoint, my hobby journey, my hobby life, my personal life, I just feel like there's just been so much going on. And I know there's a decent amount of you who follow me on Instagram already. So you've heard me talk about the potential for a federal government shutdown, which didn't happen. Again, recording this on October 4th. And there's just so much more that I would love to take the time to talk about and process, like hosting a trade night, being published in a hobby magazine, going to shows, buying some cards that really sing to my inner card child. But I won't do it here, at least not in this episode. I do want to kind of refocus and recenter about making this about grading and do a wrap up about kind of like what I've learned, and just, you know, lear just sharing some takeaways that I have from the past 10 episodes or 9 episodes. Because, as I mentioned, this mini Meet the Grader series is coming to an end, because there are so many more aspects of the hobby I want to explore. Just talking about, I just mentioned being published in a hobby magazine. Would love to talk about writing, which you don't have to spend money to write about the hobby or in the hobby. Hosting a trade night, like, that doesn't cost money. I mean, maybe there's like initial outlay depending on where you do it and if there's like costs to secure a venue, but you can become a value add to the hobby by hosting a trade night in your local area. Going to shows, of course, always great to spend money at shows. I mean, who doesn't love doing that? But but when it comes to even podcasting, I have some friends in the hobby who are trying to start out podcasting, and I would love to make a chapter episode about that. And a podcast about podcasting. It'll be so meta. But there's some things that I would love to share, kind of like what I do. For example, right now I'm using the Spotify podcaster web browser, I guess, to make this recording. And the way I do my video interviews, doing StreamYard and then posting it up on YouTube and then doing the promo reels. I mean, I guess I just did the chapter episode there, so maybe I don't have to do it. Um, but yeah, custom card art, podcasting, card cleaning, which I did a lot of earlier in this calendar year in 2023. I will admit I've been doing less of it. Not because, I mean, it certainly has in the recent weeks or months. I can't remember what, but it's become more controversial. But that's not the reason I've been doing it less. It's just that I've been spending less of my hobby time, my allocated hobby time, in doing that. But I definitely want to get better at it. I think, again, it certainly is controversial and polarizing, but I think it's I don't know, like, I just like to make my card shine, and it's not always about getting the best grades, which again, this is the grading recap, which I haven't even gotten into. um there's also hobby watchdogging, maybe even like hobby memes, because those are all really setting me up, as chapter episodes to hear from folks like, talking about artists, Tommy the Card Carver, Kev's Cards, Piggy Banks. Like, these people are doing some awesome things, and that's not to exclude anyone else, from that list. But hobby watchdogs like Dan the Card Man, like, I think he's really interesting, and he puts out some really interesting content. Memers, like This Cardboard Life and Lamine James, like, you don't really hear them in podcasts. And so I would, if other people go, hey, that's a great idea, I'm gonna have them on mine. I would love to listen to podcasts that have folks like that on, because I want to learn more. So it's not like, these people, I'm gonna keep it secret and then have them on my show later. And that's, like, I would rather just say the names, put it out into the universe. If other people want to interview them, so be it. Like, I'd be glad to listen to those episodes. And there's so many great podcasts out there. So again, like I say, in a lot of my intros recently when I've had guests on. Thank you for listening, because you could be listening to any other podcast in the world, but you're here with me. And this time it really is just me. It is me with a bottle of water so I can keep my voice somewhat lubricated to crank out this episode. Speaking of, let me take a sip and stretch my back. All right, so I'm back talking about these chapter episodes, content creation. Again, would love to do a chapter on writing. Again, writing for this publication called the Basketball Card Fanatic. Not a sponsor, maybe in the future. And that's something I want to talk about too in the future is sponsoring, because that's something that I said in my Instagram I would never do, or that I wasn't right for me at that time. But again, kind of weaving in just a little preview, I that might happen soon, sooner than I thought it might happen. And I think that was accelerated by me thinking about just the time I'm spending, what my time is worth. I love doing things that people don't even have to pay me for it, but just because the money isn't the main reason I do it doesn't mean that that isn't something that I could pursue, because I think some of the content I put out, it is good, and that's not me being arrogant. It's that I see what's out there, and there's some really good content creators, but I think I'm pretty good at what I'm doing. And having confidence in yourself is super important. So I was really proud of the article that I wrote for Basketball Card Fanatic. Shout out to Adam Gray. I would love to have him on the pod to talk about how he launched the magazine and his love of writing in the hobby. Maybe even have the editors behind Sports Card Collectors Digest. They have a podcast, Sports Card Nation, and John Newman, and I still subscribe to that magazine too, that publication. I don't know if it's called a magazine because it's like paper; it's almost like newspaper uh, on your hands. But I've said this on my Instagram in the past, and I'll say it here too on the podcast, and that is that I truly believe that this hobby has some insanely creative, intelligent, and talented people, and especially people who work in creative industries. Like, I won't name the people, but I know some people who are directly affected by the strike in Hollywood with the Writers Guild, and those people were doing some more things in the hobby space because they had freed up time. And I found their stuff, funny, fascinating, and interesting. And I was like, yeah, we need more. Let's keep pushing the content envelope. I mean, yes, there's some really good content out there, and there's just some content that just doesn't resonate with me. And I'm not here to bash anyone and say this is the type of content I don't like, but I do think as a whole, the content in the hobby space could just get more, just better, more creative. And, what if, a question that I'll pose just to myself, or, to you, the listener, is what if the very best hobby content creator hasn't done a single piece of hobby content yet, right? So what I'm trying to get at by saying that is there could be someone out there, doesn't matter how old they are, maybe they are like a teenager, but maybe they're in their 20s, 30s, or like me in the 40s, and this person has not entered the hobby yet, or is in the hobby but hasn't produced a single piece of content yet. But all they needed was a little nudge or push to do their first post, or their first reel, or their first something, and they just get a taste for it, and they start doing more, and they just knock out some amazing content that I don't even know how to fathom. But I would love to see that, right? I mean, there are some really good ones out there, but again, what if the best content creator, and who knows, right? That's so subjective in some way, in many ways, but what if that person hasn't done a single piece of hobby content yet? I think that's kind of like fascinating to me. Again, that power of potential, the power of yet, preserving that power and not knowing what's out there. So, so I would love to talk about writing. Again, trade night. I won't get into that right now, but yeah, show promotions. Going back to the grading space, before I get to my takeaways, I did want to say a couple of things. I don't know about regret, like hobby regret, but things I lament. People I didn't have on. There was one other person I wanted to interview from CGC. I really went back and forth in my head about it, but I was like, I don't want to make it seem like I'm favoring one company over another. So I decided against it. Doesn't mean that it's not gonna happen in the future, but I think for now it wasn't going to happen. And I did reach out to the other big players in the grading space. PSA never got back to me. BGS never got back to me. SGC um, did. We talked. In my notes I wrote here, mention how really close you got to getting another president from a big four grading company. So, I mean, makes sense. You can tell who I'm talking about by saying that. But yeah, they launched a new app. They got new pricing. They're just super busy, and I look forward to having the very presidential like president of one of the big four grading companies to be on this podcast in the future. And yet, what's wild is that's not even the biggest white whale of them all, because getting SGCP would be a huge get. But I was so close. I mean, I'm telling y'all, I really worked the phones and DMs, and my fingers are flying, and I was trying many different leads. I was so close to getting a former grader from PSA, like verified, not like a joker or like a random person, but I was so close to getting a former grader from PSA who was ready to just talk about everything. But ultimately, I couldn't Captain Ahab that white whale. So that's why I did decide. I think it's time to wrap up the grading company chapter here, so that we can go on to some other things. Um, but yeah, just since I mentioned the main character, well, maybe it is the whale, but Captain Ahab. Since I mentioned one of the characters in Moby Dick, I wanted to take a moment here to tell the story about the emperor who wore no clothes. Okay, and this was something I planned to write about, or I wrote out so I could talk about it here. I don't know if you know about this story, but just assuming that you don't, it's an old parable about an unnamed king who ruled an unnamed kingdom, and this king was so powerful that no one dared ever to question him. But he was hoodwinked by some folks who led him to believe that he wore the finest clothes known to mankind. But spoiler alert, in reality, he wasn't wearing anything. Okay, so but this king was so dominant in his kingdom that no one called him out for having no clothes on, and everyone, uh, you know, they saw what they saw, but they kept telling each other, "Oh, these garments are so beautiful. How could you not see them?" And you were almost led to believe that you were in the wrong if you questioned the sheer beauty of these garments, and that you were so uneducated, which I guess nowadays we would say, you're basic. You're basic if you can't see the clothes. So no one questioned the king until there was I don't know, king procession parade. I don't know what they called it, but the story goes that there was a parade and there was a young boy in the audience, and the young boy in the audience pointed at him and yelled out, "The emperor has no clothes." And then the little kid started laughing, and then another person started laughing, and then soon the whole kingdom started laughing at the emperor who was wearing no clothes. So why do I bring this up? This random parable up. I bring it up because I have asked so many people across the entire hobby, at least from my perspective. I didn't like survey 1,000 people, or it wasn't like Family Feud. Like, we asked 100,000 people. I probably did talk to like, or reached out to like close to 100 people though, because I really wanted to know. And these people were at various levels, mostly collectors, but various levels up and down the hobby food chain and ecosystem. But no one could answer the following questions with any great certainty. One, why is PSA the resale value king? Because, I came in near the middle to end of 2022. And by that time, it was like almost like well established that if you wanted to maximize the value of your card, you have to go with PSA. And then the second one, which maybe to me is more worrisome, is that why have we as a hobby accepted as a general standard practice, not just by PSA, but also one or two of the other big grading companies, that being charged more for grading a higher declared value card or a higher valued card is okay. It's almost like somewhere along the way we were told that these were established practices and tenets and that we have to all just, get in line and follow along. And, I assure you, this is not a knock on PSA. I mean, I'm going to get to PSA and the criticism I have of their actual physical slabs, but from whatever it is, marketing standpoint or hobby mentality and getting into, convincing some people that this was the way to do it. Like, I mean, I applaud them. This is not sharp criticism. At least I don't mean for it to be. I actually applaud them for taking over the crown that BGS wore in the past. And that was a time when I wasn't grading cards. I wasn't in the hobby space. The height of the pandemic, just prior to the pandemic, I left the hobby in 2012. And that time, like, there was no point. I didn't even see my first slab until 2022, going over to the rated rabbi's house and looking at these slabs. I'm like, what? People do this now? Um, but I know that competition is good for any industry, including the grading space. And it's just my opinion. Okay. This is my podcast, my platform, for the, couple of hundred people who are listening. Having one clear breakaway clubhouse leader is just not the best for us collectors. And that's just my opinion. If you're a flipper and investor, I think it is great. I think it's great having one person that or one company that you could go to who to grade with to maximize your profits, because it's just so much easier. It's like, oh, you want to get the most bang for your buck and you want to grade and flip, go with PSA. Just simple as that. There's no thinking involved. You just do it. But for collectors who may not want, and this is, I guess, where I am going to get into a little bit of criticism, is um, for some collectors who may not want the same red, white, thermal printed label on a thin piece of, from many accounts I've heard that it's like 50-cent plastic, without any grader notes or without any subgrades or without any more information on the card. It hurts them. It hurts me because, I from an aesthetic standpoint, I just don't think the red white works with every card. Just from a, aesthetic standpoint. And yet in the current state of the hobby, again, October 4th, 2023, it almost doesn't make any fiscal or financial sense to grade with any other company. So that's why I wanted to take some time here to tell a story about the emperor who wore no clothes, because I'm wondering, when is our hobby going to have its little boy in the crowd moment where we realize, hey, maybe having one resale value king isn't good for us. Having one resale value emperor isn't good for the masses. So I got more thoughts on that. So let me take a break here. Um, Come back for the next part. All right, I'm back, and oh my gosh, I'm like so energized now. I feel ready to talk about this. Okay, so more about the resale king. Okay, so not criticism about PSA as the place to go if you want to maximize the value of your card. Totally understand. That said, so at one time in our world, okay, Blockbuster, I'm a 90s kid. Blockbuster was deeply ingrained in American pop culture and entertainment, right? Many evenings, I guess it was like Friday. But even for my family, that, we didn't have a lot growing up. But maybe now that I think about it, maybe it's because we didn't have a lot growing up. many weekend nights, were renting a VHS tape from Blockbuster. On rare occasion, if I was like really lucky, I would get a video game as well. But my parents were specifically, I guess, my mom. Better not look at the popcorn and the candy at checkout. That's where the highest margins are. But an evening with a movie rental, or even including a video game rental, that's just a lot cheaper for my parents to keep me entertained than many things at that time. I mean, nowadays it's just even more things to do and more money. But at that time, the kids who had more money, they would go to sporting events, they would go to the mall, spend money. And I know you can go to the mall and not spend money, but I mean, in New York City, there weren't like suburban malls. That mall culture was definitely more of a, I don't know, not a New York City thing. But there's like things like roller skating and things that my friends who had more financial means, they would do, right? But why do I bring up Blockbuster? Because at one point, they were completely dominant, and then here comes Netflix, right? And they just make Blockbuster obsolete. So, you know, um, I don't know. I mean, I imagine PSA is going to do a lot of things to try to keep this number one spot, but how long will they be the clubhouse leader? I don't know. No one knows, right? I mean, so many things can happen, but it's just my opinion or my guess that it just won't be in perpetuity and it won't be forever, because in my heart of hearts, I just feel like there's just no way that a industry leader will maintain its position, for the eternity. Um, because when times are good, you think they'll always be good, and when times are bad, you think they'll be bad. They'll always be bad. But in the business world, we just have to admit, right, that this hobby is a multi-billion-dollar hobby, or I don't know how much it is, but any industry, any business, has ebbs and flows. They have bull and bear markets. Oh my goodness, this is like me turning into Cage Lawyer, I think, and it's his. I'm listening so much of his stuff that maybe I've turned into talking about bull and bear markets. I won't. But just there's gonna be a time, maybe not in the immediate future or the near future, like in the next year or two or three. I have no clue, but at some point, I just it's my opinion, and without it's a complete layman's guess, that whether it's from the grassroots level bottom up with collector sentiment, or from the corporate level top down with other rating companies becoming like a Netflix, in this so-called like blockbuster analogy that I'm doing here, whether it's some advancement technologically or otherwise, or probably most likely a mix of both, grassroots and top down, that again, just my opinion, that there's going to be a new resale value king in the grading space. I think ideally, the best thing that could happen is that there's just more equality and equity across the grading landscape, and that no one grading company is like the clear breakaway, resale value king. I would love to see slabs from different grading companies just being more equal in value, because that just opens up so much more possibilities for there to be diversity in slabs. People to choose, like, okay, I think I like the way horizontal slabs look, the labels, I mean. Um, the way that, like, I want greater notes, I would love greater notes. I mean, I'm saying that me, like Denny cards. Like, I would love greater notes. I would love to know why cards get certain grades. And at early on, I thought, oh, subgrades, that's the answer. But it's like, even subgrades, like, I want to know why, right? But that thing I was joking about with Ryan, like, tell me why. I can't believe I did that with my raspy voice. But but here's the thing, like, everything I'm saying, again, into this, v- you know, outer space where no one can hear you scream. This isn't a slam. Again, that's just, it's not meant to be. This is not a slam against PSA, because I'm about to get to their thermal slabs, not thermal slabs. What am I trying to say? The physical qualities of the slab. But I again just know that competition is good for any industry, and if PSA keeps improving, maybe they won't be like Blockbuster. I don't know, right? Um, I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't have any vested interest, no sponsorships. Again, at least not yet, which I'll talk about maybe in a later episode. But certainly not from any grading company either. For me, this is just a collect. I'm just a collector, right? I collect. I've done some other. I've wore some other hats in the hobby. I found out I'm not very good at breaking. I found out that I'm not very good at selling, which I got to get better at. But I love this podcast. I'm I'm energized because man, it's been such a long time since I've just talked out loud at length with no one interrupting me. So I'm just a collector who created this podcast from scratch, just talking out to the void here. So all of this is just my opinions and not meant to be, a slam against PSA for being, in their current situation. So, um, let's get to some things that, yeah, I don't even know if this is like a grading recap. I'm looking at my notes. I really hope that this isn't just like everything's about PSA because there are things that I really liked about learning about the other companies. But let me knock through some of these points real quick since I wrote them down. PSA old holders. Look, I'm sorry, but I'm looking at my cards. I'm looking at other people's cards online or in person. And if you have a low cert number, again, starting with like 0, 1, or 2, like I see these tens, and I'm like, there's no way these are current standard tens. Um, I just if you look closely at the dimpling, the corners, and the edge wear, um, just the centering, I can't. There's no way, right? So I know for me, my personal opinion is if I see an old a PSA certification number card slab that I'm not buying the grade. I'm not gonna be like blindly following. Oh, it's a PSA 10. Oh, I love it. I'm gonna buy it. Like I just have a more skeptical eye or a more discriminating eye, I guess, or taste, eye or taste, something like that. So the second thing is that when I hold a PSA slab in my hand, I think when I first came on and I felt any slab, they all felt new and shiny and awesome. Now that I've held some other slabs from like several different grading companies, this is, again, just completely my personal opinion. That's not influenced by any hobby influencers, sponsors, and like that. But yeah, it's just my opinion now that when I hold PS Labs, which I'm literally doing right now as I'm recording this, is it just does kind of feel cheap. Like if you told me that this PSA holder, the actual plastic was 50 cents, like I would believe it. And from people I've talked to, that is how much this, plastic costs. Like I don't know where they source it or all that. I know it's sonically welded. That's great. But I've also cracked PSA slabs. I've cracked the hardest slabs that the hardest holders that have been for me to crack have been BGS, um, HGA, C3. Those just feel just heavier and thicker. Um, and so I also gotta say, in a weird way, the thicker PSA slabs for like the thicker cards, I don't I don't know what it is. I just don't like the feel of those either. Um, and I haven't even gotten to the red and white thermal printed label. And I guess I did mention it earlier, but when I look at the old ones and the new ones, they're all the same color scheme, the red and white. And I know the back looks a little bit better or different, but I don't know. It's just kind of does look cheap. Now that I feel like, maybe I'm looking at the Emperor Wears No Clothes and I'm just looking at things from different lenses and I've been here a little bit longer, that I just look at it and it's like the red and white. It's almost like Coca-Cola. Like I'm staring at it right now as I'm talking and I'm like, it almost is evocative. There's no cursive lettering and the beautiful, penmanship or whatever you want to call it, type, the font, but the red and white reminds me of Coca-Cola, and it's like, if you do a blind taste test, could Pepsi taste better or RC Cola taste better? I know there's definitely craft sodas that taste much better, the ones with, like, real cane sugar, but, like, it makes you wonder, right? Like, is it marketing? Is it branding? So, Kudos again to PSA for whatever they did to tell us, the consumer, that this is the way to go, and that it's beautiful and it's awesome. I mean, I'm also the opinion that PSA, they're like the cool teacher, in school. It's like they're giving out a lot of good grades, and people want good grades. They want to be told that their cards are pretty and that they're nice and they're gem mint. Um, it makes sense why they're not doing like a 9.5 and things like that. I mean, because people don't like that, I guess, right? So maybe that's where they really took off, is people just being like, oh, I want a 10. Well, this company's gonna give me tens. That's great. But yeah, just take your nearest PSA slab, whether you have it next to you. If you're running or driving, or if you're mowing your lawn, yeah, you don't have one next to you. But if you're doing something hobby related and you have cards near you, take a look at it, because I don't know. Do you feel the same way as I do? Let me know if you do. But for me, unless there's a sliver of red somewhere in the card, can you objectively say that this, red and white thermal printed label looks nice? For me, it's like almost like fashion and sartorial uh, choices. It's like if you match a shirt and a tie, if you're a man and you have a shirt and tie, all you need is some slight color, some sliver of color in the shirt to weave into the tie color, or vice versa. That's just my sartorial sense. Um, and again, oh my goodness, I feel like I'm talking about shirts and ties and suits. I maybe this is like again veering towards cage lawyer territory. Maybe I have been listening to his podcast too much, but the more I'm talking, I feel like I'm having some some of his energy in the podcast. I'm not sure if that's comes off the same way to you, but I'm looking at this slab, kind of going back to this, and I just think that maybe I was easily influenced when I first came back into the hobby, but I just feel like now that I'm talking to more people and learning more, and just getting more educated in the hobby, I'm feeling less susceptible to that. But I also know that a lot of us just consistently overestimate our own abilities to um, have BS meters. And I also know that some of the smartest people I know in the world, again, earlier I was talking about the most creative people in the world, but there's also super smart people in the hobby who are doctors, lawyers, business owners, in and out of the hobby. And no matter how intelligent they are, and that no matter how awesome they are in taking tests, these are also the people who get separated from their money by marketers, salesmen, saleswomen, scammers, fraudsters. So yeah, we always think that we're the ones who aren't, the mark or the patsy at the poker table. But as someone who has definitely been on both ends of in that analogy of the poker table, I'll tell you that we always think that we're not the person who is the mark. All right. What else did I want to say? I mentioned BGS. Maybe I take a break here, and talk about what I liked and what I learned from the other episodes up to this point. So, all right. Okay, let's get to what I learned as takeaways, which will likely vary from what you learned, but I'll share mine. And if you want to tell me, my DMs are open. A fair amount of you do it, and I really appreciate it. I love the community building aspect. It's actually interesting. I feel like on Instagram, the comment section is where the community is built, or the posts where things out in public. But when it's DMs, it's not really community building. It's more like individual, conversations. But I love it all. All the engagement. It helps me learn. It helps me get a good pulse of the hobby. And for those of you who do engage, and I say I will talk to anyone so long as it's civil and respectful. The disrespect, I just won't tolerate. But again, that's my boundary, and we're not here to talk about that. The takeaways. Here we go. The first, I guess I have to talk about this, and I don't mean to go chronological, but when I had Ryan from GemRate on, and we were looking at the sports card numbers and the Pokemon numbers, and I was just really fascinated to see this almost flip-flopping of the positions. Like uh, the second position for total guards graded for sports cards was SGC, but and in sports card realm, CGC was fourth, with Beckett taking the third place. So it was a PSA, SGC, BGS, CGC, and that was a sports card world. But then you go to the Pokemon world and the TCG world, and again, it's PSA's number one, Beckett's number three. But in the second place for Pokemon, you have CGC, and in the fourth place, you have SGC. I thought that was really interesting. Um, it's almost like you can see the I don't know, desire of those particular countrymen and countrywomen. Like if we were calling sports and Pokemon worlds just like different countries and with different languages, it's almost like those citizens were like, we like this company more, enough for them to be, second place, and we don't like this one as much for it to be in fourth place. Still in the top four, right? I mean, still grading a lot of cards. And even though they're not PSA level. I mean, just from a raw card standpoint, I think Ryan likes to use that term like year over year, like YOY or MOM, mom, month over month. I don't know, but it's a lot of cards being graded, right? And similarly, in a very similar vein, even though we don't, or I mean, I know I don't have the raw data and numbers. Again, speaking with people in the hobby in various different levels, I do get a strong sense, and I don't think it's just my opinion here, but I do get a sense that AGS is almost like the CGC in the Pokemon and TCG world, and Tag is like SGC with the sports world, where it's almost like people, when it comes to artificial intelligence grading, it's like the non-sports card world, Pokemon TCG have really gravitated towards AGS, and the sports card folks have really gravitated towards Tag for artificial intelligence grading, artificial intelligence enabled technology grading. I think that's the way they like to say it. I don't know. But again, that's just from talking with some really reputable and good folks in the grading space, and also collectors from these different countries, if you will. CGC, much was made about the new scale and new slabs. I mean, Beckett tried to do the same thing. I will say, for me, I really like the new look of the labels and the slabs. But for people who have been in the, Pokemon and TCG world, who really had, strong nostalgia and were tethered to the old labels, I mean, I could totally get why they didn't want things to change. It's like change is stressful, right? But I gotta say, from someone who wasn't there for the blue label and how it looked, I really do love how these new labels look. Again, no angle or bend or influence in saying that. It's just my opinion. And I have, so I did receive some of these pristine labels or black labels from CGC for my non-sports cards, and they really do just make the cards absolutely pop. So I really like that. Speaking about, the different countries or different worlds of sports and non-sports cards, we said it in that first uh episode, well, not first episode, but like the episode with Ryan from Gem Rate, and just talking about just how amazingly precise these cards are for Pokemon, Japanese Pokemon cards. And we are lucky. Like we're almost like, it's no guarantee. It is absolutely no guarantee that if you pack pull American sports cards, that you're going to have every single card in that pack, especially the hit of the pack, or the hit, the case hits and of the boxes and all that stuff. Oh, I mean, case hits of the cases and the box hits of the boxes, all that stuff. That they're going to be coming out in gem mint condition. That's just, again, the world that we have accepted. And if any of the fanatics overlords are listening to this, I hope that with that change in the licensing and all that, that maybe we get something different. And again, it's not really. It sounds like a knock on Panini. It's not. I mean, I'm not trying to make it to be a knock. I imagine that having a diversity in card production and different lines and different sets, that can really muck things up. But that's also why I would maybe like to have someone, if they would be so willing to, come on to this podcast or anyone's podcast to just talk about that, right? I would love to know why these cards come out, not centered well, or the things you can imagine. It's just from product being, rattled around or damaged, and maybe not even during production, right? Just after market. But we have seen some product line issues, even with, um, you know, again, I'm not a news podcast and all that, but the two one of ones, the superfractors and all that stuff. So just something that it's been on the back of my mind, and I feel like was further reinforced by talking to folks in the TCG communities, within this grading, Meet the Grader series. Let's see what else. Forensic card grading. I will very much admit, I'm part of the problem. I have not submitted with them yet. I do plan to. I really wanted to grade in person with them if they were going to come to the Chantilly show, and I get to meet Craig, the grader I interviewed. I'm not sure if that's happening. I don't think I'm spilling any beans. It's just that I'm not. I think I misunderstood whether I will be getting to meet FCG or Craig, but I do want to submit with them in person because I want to see those grader notes. I want to see, is this something that, you know, um, I like I've seen mock-ups and examples of them, but I would love to submit cards. I love guessing grades and seeing how I do. I almost always overestimate. I think like a lot of us. But I would love to see how grader notes look for my specific cards. I would also love to know, why isn't this an industry standard practice? Why aren't we as consumers clamoring for this? Is it like too much information? Like, I know there's got to be other collectors like me who want this, and if there's enough of us as a collective group, can we make this a more of a standard industry practice? I don't know, but I guess we do vote with our wallets. Maybe some people just don't want to know, and maybe that's just fine. Let's see. C3, really like the again. I have not. I've had. I have both FCG and C3 slabs in my collection that I bought from other people. I just haven't personally graded with them. So the same thing with C3. I've had the slabs. I've cracked them. I think it's a really neat idea having horizontal slabs, custom card art in each slab. Definitely has a more like creative feel to it. Fifth subgrade for fading. I think I'm talking too fast because I feel like I'm gonna hit an hour. But anyway, yeah, for me, I mean, for that C3, $9 per card for grading. I think, uh, in a day and age currently where companies are charging double, triple, even much more that, depending on declared value and actual value of the card. Um, we just got done talking about how these pieces of plastic cost less than $1, and the graders, you know, on the low end, like say PSA, where I hear that it's like a card a minute, could be wrong, but that's what we hear. And places like FCG and C3 saying they take several minutes per card, which I think is better. Get a real comprehensive look of a card. But just I'm not gonna do the exact math, but I'm just riffing here. But go ahead and do the math. I just feel like that's just so much money, right, in the grading space. No wonder people want to just go into the grading space. It's just there is quite a amount of money there. But again, $9 per grading, I think is you know uh, other companies want to do, like, say, Pokemon grading for $9 card, because one, it does seem as if Pokemon cards are easier to grade, but also, yeah, why have we accepted that we're gonna pay a lot of money to grade like cards, and that different cards, depending on value, will cost more to grade? Again, just I'm still trying to wrap my head around. And even with the Meet the Grader series, I feel like I haven't figured that out. So I look forward to submitting for grading C3 forensic card grading. I've done it with CGC already. I've used Card Boss after the interview with Sean from Card Boss. Let me see what else I wanted to say. Yeah, I think, with the custom card art with see-through grading, if there are cards that I want to keep for my PC, yeah, if I want to flip, it really would be hard for me to. Again, I know these grading companies have these examples of, we have comparable sales with PSA. Um, but like that's selective data and all that. And again, that's not to criticize these grading companies, but right now, if you're looking to flip a card, especially if you're trying to do the grade and flip, I mean, PSA again has a stranglehold, but for cards that I want to keep in my PC, I would love to have custom card art on my slab and have horizontal slabs. I'll definitely be submitting horizontal cards for submission, um, because not everything has to be about maximizing the value of every single card you own. I guess for some people, it is. That is the name of the game. So, Card Boss, again, not a sponsor. None of these companies are, and no one currently sponsors me, which could change in the future, right? But I'm wondering how much would I pay, right, to get a raw card review done in the comfort of my own home without having to ship the card out, and having to wait several days or having to go to a show and drop it and then pick it up later that day, and again pay whatever double digit amount of money to do that, and you get it in like 15 minutes with Card Boss, right? Would I pay $2 per card to get uh, an artificial intelligence app to give me not just a subjective opinion, but what the machine, what the AI technology is calibrated to tell me? Would I pay $2? I think I would. To $3? Yeah. 4, 5? Again, maybe. Right? We're getting to that point where, what is the risk? What is the the consumer price point where we are like, I will pay for the convenience, right? Maybe if we think this is actually like super accurate, like how could this not be something that we do? So it does make me wonder, like, how is AI enabled grading not going to be the future of grading? Whether it's, a hybrid approach, like with like, Moneyball plus old scouts eye, looking at these players, kind of like a mix of both. But isn't that what HGA was doing with hybrid grading? Uh, and they I don't know how somehow, right, during the pandemic they got really big, or they were getting good market share, and a lot of people were grading to them because they still had their doors open and they were taking submissions. And then like somewhere they became like some sort of like you know like the laughing stock or something. And I say that because I have also admittedly used them as a punchline, which I don't think it was really fair in hindsight for sure. But it's like, why did I think that? Is it, was I influenced to think that HGA was like not as good as other companies? Was there a vested interest for people to try to convince me that, that PSA was like, the best, and that, it's great to have the cool teacher, to have Oprah, you get a gem mint, you get a gem mint, everyone gets a 10, right? So everyone wants to be told that their ultra modern cards are just beautiful and perfect, and that we don't have a 9.5 in our scale. So, but going back to, yeah, AI enabled, how much would we be willing to pay for that convenience? Oh, and especially like again, it was like genuine surprise when Sean was telling me, yeah, people can use this to do a raw card review of cards they want to buy on eBay. Like, I actually wanted to make some content about that because I think it's just so cool, right? Can you imagine just like you don't know the condition of a raw card, you see it on eBay, they make um, no attestments or promises or guarantees as to the condition of the card. You just have to take a huge giant leap of faith in buying the card and hoping that it's in gem mint quality if you think that's what you have to pay to get it. And then but here you have, pay some X amount of dollars to have someone tell you, not someone, I'm sorry, the AI app tell you like this is what our system tells us it's going to grade. I think that's pretty neat. So, final thing, I think I'm not going to do another parter. Let me just finish this off and call it a night. Um, I think that the main thing we as hobbyists want is transparency in the grading process. But then again, maybe some of us just want to be told that our cards are beautiful and for us to maximize the value. But I do get a sense that a true collector, it's not just even about grading. It's just not all about the dollars and cents. It just can't be. I just that's just the feeling I get. But for true collectors, we just want to preserve the card in the holder, to know that it is authentic. Again, I think I mentioned this a while back, but grading was originally meant to be the determining the way to determine the authenticity of a card. And so, let's not forget that too, I guess. I don't know. I guess in this day and age where ultra modern, everything's pack pulled and immediately into a penny sleeve and top loader and immediately goes into grading, like, yeah, we know that these cards are real because they came straight out of the packs, right? But let's not forget that there is that value of grading too, which is the authenticity or veracity that this card is what it's we think it is or what we hope it is. So speaking about penny sleeves and top loaders, to end on a light note, we all found out that we really do put on our socks and shoes on the same way. Socks first, then shoes. Most people right shoe, right sock first, right shoe first, like that. Um, Same way you put in your cards and your penny sleeves and top loaders. I think it really does depend on whether you're right hand dominant or left hand dominant. If you are right hand dominant, that card is going in right bottom right corner first. If you're left hand dominant, that bottom left corner is going in first. And yes, learning that sports card and TCG card collectors sleeve their cards in different ways. Pokemon players and TCG players putting in their cards upside down, or what am I trying to say? Top right corner or top left corner first into a penny sleeve. Just wild to me, but that's why you learn something new every day in this hobby. I again, just it's different countries, different customs, different languages. I love learning more about TCG. I don't know if I'll really become a serious collector in it, but I know my kids love it. I'm very intrigued by it. I am like definitely. I see. I don't see myself just as like a 90s basketball card collector anymore. I just love cardboard. I love the cards. I love getting to meet different collectors. It's like when you go to a different country and you travel, you when you know the language, it's like really fun to travel, right? So it's almost like if I can learn different lanes or different genres or different sports or different whatever it is, I get to meet new people. And I think that's really fantastic. So I think that's the way I want to end this. Speaking about different countries, all the different countries that listen to this podcast, I think it's just wild. Since we did talk about October and Oktoberfest and Dirk Nowitzki, see, that's a pro podcaster move. Just bring it right back to the full circle without notes on that. I just want to say Auf Wiedersehen. I want to say Wunderbar, Dankeschön, all the good stuff. I'll give shout outs to other countries another time, but I got to rest my voice. It's been so long. I can feel the strain in my neck and my voice doing this and my back. So thank you so much for listening to this. No outro. Once I add this up, this has got to be over an hour. Oh my gosh! But you guys are awesome, really. I'm rooting for you. Thank you for supporting me. You guys are just fantastic, and have a wonderful next few days, weeks, months of your hobby journey. Take care.